west of Phoenix, Arizona. It's very, 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 very nice, beautiful. Got lots of clouds, sun's going down. It's awesome temperature. It's great. Wish you were here. This what we're going to do. We had a scheduled interview last week or early last week with Dennis O'Connor, gentleman I met at Max Egan's bar, in Anarchapulco in, what do they call it? Bonefil. Bonefil, small little beach that's on the beach there, and it was just a good rip-roaring, rocking party on the last night. And we had a conversation with Dennis O'Connor. Let me go ahead and show you his webpage here so you can kind of, go looky-see. Now, Dennis O'Connor is from, I think he was originally from Ireland, and he lives in Australia now, where Max just escaped. And Dennis, are you back in Australia now?
Yep, back in Australia, up near the top there in a little town called Cairns, which is a beautiful subtropical place up here.
Subtropical. That always sounds good. Now, we were talking and yakking it a little bit, what he was doing. His webpage is awakeninginhealth.com. Awakening in Health. That sounds, like all positive words. Okay, so awakeninginhealth.com. You go check it out. Now, the topic is going to talk about holistic health, healthcare industry, water. Okay, now water was one of the things, and it was a while ago, and I was, recreating and drinking, and kind of, but I remember the conversation enough. Dennis, you need to come on the show. I want to continue this conversation, with the audience. Now, he's been working in healthcare for, 25 years. He's qualified in intensive care nursing, which gave him a great understanding of how the body works. But he worked in other areas of general nursing, but found himself gravitating towards the area of mental health with a focus on addiction treatment, acute mental health, and very serious. That is the very serious side of the field. Now, he had a few breaks in between. He sold real estate. He embarked on self-development courses, became a scuba diver instructor. So he has a wide range he knows several different things. Now, over the 20 years in the mainstream health industry, he became steadily more and more disillusioned with the misinformation and harmful treatment that he witnessed. Now, from harmful and deadly medications being given inappropriately to outrageous so-called advice and blatant disregard of therapies, interventions that were effective, he felt he was unable to, stay in that system anymore. He's like, I think I'll decline. Now, he went on, for his own investigation of how to help people, to the point that he created awakeninginhealth.com. I tell you, he's encouraged to do that. And he has a partner also, I saw on the website, that rounds out their services. So let's go ahead and talk about, I want to get the history, whatever you want to talk about, and but what I wanted to do is the transition to you actually creating Awakening in Health, and then you're always going to get a why from me. Yeah, why this and why do that? Why? I need to know the motivation. So help me out. Explain to us what awakeninginhealth.com is, what your mission is, and why you went to Anarchapulco, and what makes you so cool, and then I'll let you go monologue me for an hour. Go. No, go ahead. Tell me everything. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just breaking up. I'm just going to move my little Wi-Fi thing just for 1 second.
Now we'll make sure we get a good signal. I think we're okay.
Yeah. Okay, that you're coming through a bit better now. That's good.
All right, go ahead and monologue us, man. Tell us everything.
Yeah, sure. So my last little stint in mainstream health, it was, as you mentioned before, was in mainstream psychiatry. And because I've taken some of those general skills from intensive care and some other areas, I was really I got into that acute stage place, and I was thinking, this is going to be great. I'm going to learn all this stuff. And when I got there, well, I'll tell this story a lot, but I was saying to about 3 of my so-called peers who were meant to be teaching me about psychiatry, why don't we have a focus on gut health here? And on one situation, this person said, why would we do that? And I said, because of serotonin. And they looked at me and they said, what about it? And I said, because it's produced in your stomach. And not a lot of people know that. And I expected that in that area, they would know this. And this person basically pulled out a chair, slammed the keys on a keyboard, opened up Google and went, no, it's not. Checked Google and looked at me and went, oh, It is. I never knew that. And this is right at I guess this is about 7 or 8 years ago, right at the beginning of my kind of adventure into acute care. And even at that stage, I'm thinking there's something very sorely wrong with the system if these so-called experts that I'm meant to be learning from don't know some of these basics. And unfortunately, already just since then, it just got worse and worse. And it got to the stage where I was having more or less stand-up arguments with doctors and psychiatrists about postponing the use of antidepressants. And our research tells us that if you take antidepressants within a first 2 to 3 week period, sometimes up to 6 weeks, you can become more suicidal. And I wasn't allowed to tell patients that. Because
wait a minute.
that
When
might
you
talk
say
them out.
postpone the use of antidote, what do you mean postpone the use? Or just
So
not
essentially,
use
there's a
it?
fellow.
What does that mean?
What that means is there's some excellent research. One of the people who is a bit of a pioneer in this research is a fellow from England called Irving Kirsch. And he's got very well established papers that say if you delay prescribing antidepressants for up to 2 to 3 weeks, the outcome is exactly the same as if you had prescribed antidepressants, except you don't get the side effects of antidepressants. So in other words, you can delay prescribing antidepressants and people get better. If you prescribe antidepressants, you invariably have people stuck on a medication, which
Or are they
causes
putting
side
them on a
effects.
placebo and telling them they're
No, not at all.
So they just
No,
don't. They say, all right,
all
we're just going to wait a couple of weeks and see how you feel.
absolutely with support. That's exactly right. With psychological interventions, lifestyle changes. Absolutely. And this kind of information I wasn't allowed to tell patients because otherwise they would say no to antidepressants. So that's a sinister system if that happens.
Okay, now wait. All right, let's drill down on this a little bit.
Yep.
I want to discuss the idea of what is and is not allowed. You kind of glazed on that a little bit to where, I wasn't allowed. They wanted this. Who's they? What's this that they wanted? Is it just, Pfizer has an office, sitting there at the nurse station or something? I mean, what are you saying?
Excellent question. So when we do our reviews on patients and clients, it's almost like a round table thing where you have doctors, nurses, social workers, occupational therapists, and essentially you have the leader of the team, even though it's a different stream, who would be the consultant psychiatrist. And the
Can you tilt your camera down a little bit? I'm
Yeah.
really almost losing you there. There you go.
Yeah.
Great. That looks a little
Okay.
more. Yeah, get it to where it knocks.
Now let's see. Hopefully it stays there. Excellent.
Right.
So you have the consultant psychiatrist who I guess puts out the ethos of the team, and then he would train the senior registrars and the other psychiatrists underneath him, and that would be, I guess, the culture in the team, and then we're as nurses expected to follow that culture. So when I say as nurses or clinicians we weren't allowed, I'm talking about that meeting in these boardrooms almost, where these doctors go, well, why didn't you do this? Well, no, you have to. No, you shouldn't say this. And in our clinical meetings, that was the guidance from the team. And I don't think it was a sinister type of thing from, let's say, Pfizer or any of these medical groups. I honestly, after lots and lots of reflection over the years, it's very much more to do with the cult of medicine and how the medication is a fix for everything. And as another fairly shocking story, one of the consultant psychiatrists I used to work with was a director of clinics in Europe. And on many occasions, he'd say to people like myself and some of the other clinicians, I'm a consultant psychiatrist. All I know is medication. That other stuff is up to you.
What do you mean that's all he knows? That's the only class he... You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of... you talk to people about nutrition. Certainly as we were going into COVID stuff, they're talking about your immune system and nutrition and everything. And you find out that doctors didn't get... They got like, I don't know, a day class on nutrition or something and all of their medical training. I'm like, what the crap is that? So you're telling me a psychiatrist is going, hey man, all I got was a schedule of medications, the symptoms. I typed into Chat GPT and it told me what drug to give them or something. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And even then,
Wow.
I sometimes do a little bit of public talking. I talk about this in particular. But the meetings we used to have about certain clients, it was almost like sitting in a pub and people taking pot shots at a dartboard. And we have this idea that when we have diagnosis, it's all set out and it's all so precise. But the discussions these doctors are having were, okay, so this medication for bipolar type 2 isn't working. Maybe it's not bipolar type 2. Maybe it's depression with facets of this behind it or this. So why don't we drop this medication down by half and then add this in and then maybe put some lithium in there and let's see how that goes. And then you've got somebody else putting up their hand. Well, I saw that this medication here might help with sleep. So why don't we change this around and talk? Honestly, there was no science. This was a mishmash of I don't know,
playing
almost like useful idiots sitting around a friggin' table.
They're doing monkey darts
lives.
with pharmaceuticals.
Yep. Yep.
This is this how they're trained? It kind of a club that evolved this way, or that's how they, have their Facebook group, and this is how I do it, or is this intentional at medical school? I mean, who are these people, and what country are you in when this is happening?
So I've worked in England, I've worked in Australia, and I've worked throughout Australia as well. But the kind of situations I'm referring to now are up in the place I live, which is in Cairns in Queensland. And as I said, it's very much, it is a cult. And the higher up you get, the more you're placed on a pedestal. So if you can get to a consultant psychiatrist or professor level, your, I guess, behavior and your nous is the thing that everybody else is trying to aspire to. So once you get underneath that, once you get underneath the Pope, which is the consultant psychiatrist, you get the bishops. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to throw around how clever they are. And you get these little ego clashes, you get these kind of ego little dances where somebody has another idea about this absolutely subjective science. So, and I use this again for a bit. I've over the years helped a lot of people get off a lot of medications. And one of the most toxic diagnoses is a thing called bipolar, okay? And bipolar is essentially, there's some very serious sickness that mimics what we might call severe bipolar. But underneath that, there are people all around the world who've been diagnosed bipolar inaccurately. And what I try to do when I see those situations is I try to put in the words labile mood instead. And labile just means up and down. And a mood, as you know, is just your mood. So when people take away that diagnosis of bipolar and appreciate that they've got a labile mood, all of a sudden they lose having an illness. And if they've got labile mood, then they can do things to make it better.
Yeah, I want
and
my
invariably,
diagnosis.
that doesn't involve drugs.
I evolve. I revel in my diagnosis, my disability, my suitcase full of medications and stuff. But by the time they get to you, they're trying to get off of that mindset, I would imagine. And
Absolutely.
What's the motivation? Why are they visiting you? How did they come to you? Is it a search? It's been, marketing on the internet. They talk to their cousin. I mean, it's word of mouth. How is it that they find you?
So initially I had a captured audience because I was working in what was called an acute care team for mainstream health. People would come in the door because they're desperate. So it's only in the last 6 months or so that I've just embarked on this new business, Awakening in Health, with my partner. So that seems to be a combination of exactly what you said, but probably more word of mouth at the moment. And I think the real theme and the real philosophy behind what I want to do is tapping into, and we've discussed this before, is something called the placebo effect. This idea that your intention and that your motivation and that your mood can fix about anything, and not just mental health problems, but even other chronic diseases, especially if you're taking away some of the toxicities or the micronutrient deficiencies. And this is something that I've had to learn over the last 10 years or so outside of how I was trained. So I've spent the last 10 years unlearning the majority of what I was meant to be a professional about.
And I see you got a podcast here too. Let's check that out. All right, you're over on BitChute, Awakening in Health. This is a serious effort that you're making towards this. And here it comes. Why? Okay. What motivated you going, I need to do this? Was it something that you experienced, something that you saw a market for? What was it?
Listen, I think the biggest original motivation was my frustration of being trapped in a situation which I think is harmful. So and I've got so many anecdotes I could tell you, but I don't want to bore you senseless.
I mean, I want the audience to get introduced to you. I want them to see.
Sure.
This is. I tell you what. This is. I want to share. The motivation I get when I meet someone like you is that you have something to share and you understand the language that our motivation is, leave me aloneism. I want to, be free. I want to be left alone. I want to have clear options that are available to me that may not be mainstream. It's not, approved by whatever. And that gives libertarians and voluntarists and anarchists a lot more freedom to select from a cornucopia, a plethora of opportunities to actually fix something instead of somebody having an investment in me being sick. I'm like, come on, and at a gathering like Anarchapulco, there's from the audience, you could pull a gazillion of the speakers. The same thing, a lot of the events that we do. The people that attend, you go, well, we'll see you next year. You can be up, you can be up, you can be up. And, I enjoy these conversations because a lot of times when you get to this kind of point in your life that you have, oh my goodness, you had experiences, other than doing this. So then you're not trapped into the money-making mechanism of, I get my boat if I have, 93.4% of, up the schedule vaccinated children, then I get my bonus